When the
Hey,
doorbell
come
rang
on
that sunny
in.
Saturday afternoon,
It's so
Ethan's
good to
heart thudded
see
like a
you.
nervous teenager's. He hadn't been on a date in almost 5
I
years.
can't stay long.
For the first time in what felt like forever, he had
He
spent the
followed
morning
me
not
here.
fixing lunchboxes or scrubbing crayons off walls, but picking a shirt that didn't have a coffee stain on it. The smell of lemon polish still lingered in the small apartment, the faint hum of cartoons echoing from his daughter's room. He smoothed his hair, glanced in the mirror, and took a deep breath. He was ready, or at least he thought he was, but the moment he opened the door, everything inside him froze. There she was, Clara, standing with a shy, warm smile, her long brown hair brushing her shoulders, her floral dress catching the soft daylight. She looked even more radiant than her photos, the kind of woman whose presence softened a room. Yet before Ethan could greet her, before he could even offer his nervous joke about surviving single parenthood, she leaned closer and whispered, "My kids are outside." For a second, the world tilted. He blinked. "Your kids?" But she only nodded, her expression filled with guilt and a strange, trembling hope. Ethan's life had been an endless loop of early mornings and late nights since his wife, Nora, passed away 4 years ago. A car accident, sudden and cruel, had left him raising their 5-year-old daughter, Hazel, alone. His world had shrunk to the size of his daughter's laughter and his responsibilities. He wasn't bitter, just tired. He had learned to smile through exhaustion, to keep promises even when he was breaking inside. Meeting Clara online had been an accident, or maybe fate's small mercy. They had connected through a single dad support forum, or she had commented on one of his posts about burnt pancakes and bedtime stories. Their messages became late-night talks about parenting, loss, and the quiet courage it takes to wake up every morning and keep going. He had looked forward to this day more than he'd admit, a simple lunch, a little laughter, a chance to remember what being an adult felt like. So when she whispered that her kids were outside, Ethan's instinct wasn't anger, it was understanding. He knew what it meant to juggle chaos, to make promises you can't always keep. He smiled softly and said, "Then bring them in." A few seconds later, 2 small figures appeared, a boy and a girl, about the same age as Hazel. The boy, Oliver, clutched a worn backpack, his eyes wary but curious. The little girl, Mia, hid behind her mother's dress, peeking out with the kind of timid innocence that melts any parent's heart. Clara looked embarrassed, apologizing under her breath. Their babysitter canceled last minute. "I didn't want to call it off." Ethan only nodded and stepped aside. "You did the right thing." The afternoon sun streamed through the living room window as the kids settled on the rug. Hazel emerged from her room, clutching her stuffed bunny, eyeing the newcomers with suspicion, the kind only children reserve for strangers invading their space. But within minutes, crayons, toy cars, and giggles took over. Ethan and Clara found themselves sitting across from each other on the couch, surrounded by the soft chaos of parenthood. What was meant to be a quiet date turned into a spontaneous playdate, and strangely, it was perfect. Clara's laugh filled the room like music, and Ethan found himself studying the small details, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her eyes softened when she looked at her kids, how she didn't pretend to have everything together. They talked about the exhaustion of being both parents, the nights spent worrying about bills, and the little victories, a good report card, a calm bedtime, a day without tears. By the time the kids were eating sandwiches at the kitchen table, Ethan realized he hadn't felt this peaceful in years. There was something healing about watching Clara gently wipe ketchup off Mia's cheek or hearing Oliver ask him shyly if he had any toy cars. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was real, and it felt like home. As the days turned into weeks, their lives began to intertwine in quiet, beautiful ways. Clara would drop by after work, sometimes with her kids, sometimes alone when her sister could watch them. They'd cook dinner together, pasta, tacos, pancakes for dinner when neither had the energy for anything fancy. Hazel and Mia became inseparable, building pillow forts and whispering secrets that made both parents smile, but the closer they got, the more Ethan's fear returned. Love, he thought, was a luxury he couldn't afford to lose again. Every time Clara reached for his hand, he remembered the last time he'd dared to love and how it ended with a phone call that shattered his world. He began to pull back, answering texts late, finding excuses to cancel plans. Clara noticed. One evening, as the sky outside blushed with orange light, she came over unannounced. The kids were playing in Hazel's room, laughter spilling through the door. Clara stood quietly in the kitchen, her fingers fidgeting with her bracelet. "Ethan," she said softly, "did I do something wrong?" Her voice trembled, and his heart broke at the worry in her eyes. He wanted to tell her everything, the guilt, the fear of losing another piece of himself. Instead, he looked down, his throat tight. You didn't. I just don't want to hurt anyone. Clara stepped closer, her expression gentle. You're not. You're helping us heal. And maybe, we're helping you too. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then Hazel's laughter rang out again, that pure, unfiltered joy only children can have, and Ethan realized she was right. He wasn't broken. Just scared of feeling whole again. Months passed, and what began as an accidental meeting turned into something steady, strong, and almost sacred. They spent weekends at the park, teaching their kids how to ride bikes. Family movie nights replaced lonely dinners. Slowly, Ethan's apartment began to change, an extra pair of shoes by the door, drawings on the fridge that said Hazel and Mia's family. One Saturday afternoon, as sunlight poured through the curtains, Clara arrived looking worried. Her job at the bakery had been cut. Bills were piling up. Ethan saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the same exhaustion he had known for years. Without hesitation, he offered help, but she shook her head. I can't keep leaning on people, Ethan. He smiled softly. You're not leaning. You're sharing the load. That night, as they sat on the couch with their kids asleep beside them, Clara looked at him and whispered, You know, when I knocked on your door that day, I almost turned around. I thought you'd think I was irresponsible, showing up with my kids. Ethan chuckled. I thought I was the irresponsible one, agreeing to a date while my daughter was still learning how to brush her teeth without flooding the bathroom. Their laughter faded into silence, the kind that feels safe. Then she added quietly, Maybe we were both just trying to find someone who'd understand. He reached for her hand. And we did. A year later, their blended little family was stronger than ever. The walls that once echoed with loneliness now held warmth, noise, and messy joy. Hazel's drawings now included all 5 of them, 2 parents, 3 kids, and a cat that they'd rescued together. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Ethan decided to surprise Clara. He spent the entire morning cooking breakfast, helped the kids wrap small handmade gifts, and decorated the living room with balloons. When she walked in, her eyes filled with tears. He handed her a small card that read, You whispered your kids were outside that day. I didn't know you were also bringing my missing pieces with you. Tears rolled down Clara's cheeks as she hugged him, whispering, You gave us a home, Ethan. He smiled through his own tears. No, Clara. You reminded me how to live again. Sometimes, love doesn't arrive in grand gestures or perfect timing. It comes quietly, through small acts of patience, shared laughter, and the courage to open your heart again. Ethan learned that day at the door that love isn't about starting over, it's about continuing with someone who understands where you've been.